Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester chats with writer and comic book legend D.G. Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/CapesandLunatics. Hope to see you there.
This is DeMatteis, and you are listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
Everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Lunatics. It's me, Phil, and I am here with a returning guest, friend of the show, the legend of comics himself, Mr. J.M. DeMatteis. Hello, sir. Probably the busiest man.
Wow, Phil, you're cutting in and out. I can't actually hear you very well.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now you're fine. Yeah.
Okay.
But before it was like all cutting in and out.
Okay.
Anyway, hello.
Hello.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. So, yes. Well, you have many things going on right now, but probably the main reason we're here is, what do you call it? Phase 2, maybe, of the DeMultiverse is coming?
Phase 2, that's what we're calling it. Phase 2 of the DeMultiverse. Yeah, as you know, we did a Kickstarter. I guess it was the tail end of 2022 with Spellbound Comics, and we launched 4, and by the time we were done, we launched 5 new titles with 5 different artists and an array of wonderful artists doing alternate covers and a beautiful collected edition and the whole thing. And our original idea was, there were 4 main titles in a bonus book, so the people that supported the Kickstarter were going to vote among the 4 titles and see which one of the 4 they wanted to have continue. We figured we would do the next Kickstarter would be the rest of the miniseries for that title. But when we tallied the votes, what got the most votes was continue all of them. So that is what we've done, and now we are launching second issues of Godsend, Wisdom, Layla in the Lands of After, and Any Man. And the bonus book got such a great response that we are also going to have a second issue of the Edward Bloom Mysteries as well.
Oh, nice.
So that's all launching on Kickstarter July 9th. You'll be able to get the titles that you missed if you missed them, and the new titles, and the rocket's getting ready to take off. I mean, as I learned last time, that was my first Kickstarter. It's a lot of work going into this thing.
Oh, yeah.
But profoundly satisfying to get that many ideas out into the world and work with this array of incredible artists. It's just really something.
Was that, I'm trying to remember, was that always the plan to do 4, or were you just like, okay, I have this idea, I have this idea, I have this idea?
Well, when it started, when I was, my partner who put together this whole Spellbound imprint for this, David Baldy, I was telling him a bunch of ideas that I had, and I thought we would pick one and do a mini-series, and that would be that. And he's the one who said, let's do them all, let's do 4 number 1s, And then, I had been working on the Edward Bloom thing with the artist Vasilis, and we said, we had the first issue all done, so let's get that out there too, So and we threw that in as a surprise last time toward the end of the campaign, but this time we're going to have that right from launch. That bonus is there if you want it, and hopefully people will want it.
Yeah, I picked these up, and I know you said I picked them up a little later, and I know you said, the choice was all 4 books continue on, and I was like, really? Everyone just picked 4 books? I read all these. And I was like, okay, I see it. I see why everyone wants these to continue, because I mean, some of them, it's like, it's like Well, most of them, it's like I want to see where this is going next. I mean,
me too.
You don't even know what's. I was gonna say Godsend's like more like a mystery, but I mean, all of them, it's just like, yeah, I need to see where this is going because.
Yeah, when you do a first issue, it's like the pilot of a TV show. You're setting things up, you're building your world, but like I know as I'm writing it, where all these books are going. And with each issue, it gets broader and broader and deeper and bigger and taller, So with the first issues, what you're really getting is the foundation. And now, we get the next level of the building.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I'm glad you're doing the Kickstarter, and I know it's a ton of work, but yeah, the only disappointment I have is like, man, we got to wait so long between issues. But that's the nature of Kickstarter. Yeah.
It just is. It just is. I know. And it's corralling a lot of talent. There's a lot of people. Just for the main four, that's a lot of people to corral to get those books done while everyone is doing other work as well. But we're doing it, and I'm really, really happy with these second issues because they just turned out really, really beautifully. I'm thrilled, and I've been proofreading lettering this week, and we wanted to make sure, as we did last time, that these books are either completely done or 95% done when we launch. Because we don't want people waiting around for months and months and months and months and years, as you hear some stories, to get their books. I think last time we probably wrapped in November, and by the early spring, I think they had their books. So that was good. Worked out fine, and that allowed us time to put together the collected edition. I wrote introductions for all the stories, and hope we will do the same thing. First collected edition, Tom DeFalco wrote the foreword, and this time we got Danny Fingeroth, who was the Spider-Man editor at Marvel for a long time and has written lots of wonderful books on pop culture since then. So he's writing the intro for this one. We've got a really great lineup of alternate covers that haven't been announced yet, so I can't tell you.
Oh, wow.
We also will have a new artist for Godsend. Matthew Dow Smith, my buddy, did the first issue, and for a variety of reasons, he couldn't do the second. But he will be involved, and I can't say how. And we have a new artist there, and Liam Sharp, who did the cover for the collected edition the first time, is doing a new cover for the second collected edition. Liam was just nominated, in fact, for an Eisner as a cover artist recently. And so just a lot of really talented people throwing in their powers and abilities beyond those of mortal men.
So probably, I mean, the big question, at least the Kickstarter people want to know, is there anything you learned like this time, like from the first time around where you're like, okay, this is definitely a thing to do, or no, don't do this, or, something you wanted to change, or
something I wanted to change? That's a really great question. No, I think considering that neither David nor I had ever done this before, I think it worked out well. And just the difference is now we know what to expect. Mm-hmm. We know what to expect. Whereas before, every step was sort of a mystery. What's going to happen when we do this? And you see all this flurry of activity at the beginning, and then it quiets down, then it peaks up, then it quiets down. Then at the end, everyone goes crazy and wants to get in at the last minute. Well, I didn't know any of that. Just the way the waves of the thing move was a learning curve.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people who've done Kickstarters, and that seems to be like the common thing with everyone. It's like it's big at the beginning, then it kind of dips, and then towards the end it goes back up. And
yeah. I remember the last day we were watching the totals, and it was like the closer we got, all of a sudden there was just like mad rush of people, which is great. So we'll see. It's going to be an adventure again. It's going to be an adventure. And I think the fact that we have these second books, and we're offering all the first books in the first collected edition and all that, there's a lot more material there for people to dive into as well. So,
have you noticed, I've heard from a few people that supposedly the Kickstarter comic community is like very supportive, where it's like, oh, if you like this book, you should check out,
Well, I tell you, because of the first Kickstarter, I've supported a lot of Kickstarters in the time since, because suddenly it's sort of like any experience that you have in life. Until you do it, you don't really understand it, and once you understand it, it's like, oh God, I have to support these people because I know what they're going through, So I've been trying to support. I've supported quite a few Kickstarters in the time since we did ours, because I understand what's going on there, and the work that goes into it.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like you have a good team behind you. I mean, some of these people, it's like you're either just maybe the writer and the artist, maybe you're just they're the only two people on the Kickstarter. If I didn't have David Baldy working with me, I couldn't have done it.
I couldn't have done it. He did the heavy lifting in places where I couldn't, and where a lot of what I'm focusing on is the creative stuff. And the fact that David is also a writer, he worked in TV as a writer-producer for like 20 years. So he's also someone I can trust creatively. So if he reads one of my scripts and says, what about clarifying that? I'll pay attention to what he has to say, So it's good to have someone who's a good business mind, but he's also got a good creative mind that I could lean on if I need that help, And he's very good, and he's just a good guy. He's been fantastic through this whole process.
And now you're telling me about David and you, of course, it's like people who've worked in different mediums. Do you think we're going to hit an age here pretty soon where, people are going to start licensing like Kickstarter projects for like live action or animated?
I wouldn't be surprised. And then, of course, we're seeing the other thing where we're seeing established companies doing Kickstarters.
Oh, yeah. Image just did that. The G.I. Joe one. Yeah.
I was joking, I think, last time that our Kickstarter should say in big letters, Keanu Reeves, and then little tiny letters, has nothing to do with this Kickstarter. And we'll make $1 million in a day,
Yeah.
Because, Boom did that massive thing with him where they made a fortune.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's like Image just did that whole, they're reprinting all the old G.I. Joe, Larry Hama from like Marvel. I think they said they did over $2 million or something with that. Yeah.
Wow. As George Bailey said in It's a Wonderful Life, I'll take half that in cash.
Yeah, because I think they took almost 200 issues and just put them in like 4 big like volumes, like nice hardback. Yeah.
Well, I hope Larry's getting a good chunk of that someday.
I hope so. I mean, just the work he's been on that for 40 years.
Yeah. I mean, that franchise, and certainly in comics, would not have existed without him.
So yeah, I kind of want to talk about the books, but I don't know how much you want to spoil of any of these.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what's happening in the second issue.
Oh no, of course. I'm
happy to talk about the first issues.
Oh,
sure.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was surprised because I thought, I'd have like 1 or 2 favorites I'd probably like more than the others. No, these are. I mean, I was all like, yes. Again, continue these all, but. Like Any Man, just like the conspiracy, it's like if you just like look at the art in this, it seems like you're.
Oh, David Baldion, man, I worked with him on Ben Reilly's Spider-Man. It was the first time we ever worked together, and then when we were putting this together, I said we have to see if we can get David to do this. And it's so funny because we have David Baldy, my partner, and then we have David Baldion. It's like my wife is like, which one is that? He did a phenomenal job, and he's doing a phenomenal job with the second issue. Yeah, Any Man is the one that on the surface seems like the most traditional superhero story, and then we keep flipping it. And I'm realizing as I'm writing it that there were flips in there coming that I didn't even realize when I was creating the story in the first place. And I love when that happens. When the story surprises you. Yeah. When I was writing the second issue, something happened at the end, and this is my favorite thing about writing. When I'm like, I wrote it and went, I didn't know that. It's like, really? Oh, that's great. And I figure if I say that, then the reader has to say that as well. Because if I'm surprised and I'm the guy that thought I was in control of this story, which I learned years ago, I am not in control of the story. I only think I am. So so Any Man is a great one. And they're all, it's like picking your favorite kid. Whatever one I'm working on in the moment is the one I'm loving the most. Wisdom is a supernatural Western.
Yes.
It sort of brought me back to, when I was a kid growing up, Westerns were like, I think 80% of what was on television when I was like 8 years old was Westerns, And I forgot about Westerns for years, and it was like lodged in the back of my head. And suddenly this idea started coming. It was like, oh, and the little kid in me that loved Westerns so much came alive. And then suddenly it turned into a supernatural Western. And it's another one. It's a big, big story. So I'm writing these chapters, but in my mind, this is like Lord of the Rings in the Old West. It's epic. And we have, each issue is a step toward that. Even if we finish the first miniseries, I know there has to be more after that and more after that. So my hope is maybe after we do the first miniseries, maybe we'll find publishers that will take those on, and we'll go from there, and we can put them out more regularly after that. And Wisdom is done by Tom Mandrake. And if you want Western and if you want supernatural, he's your guy. He's done great Western work, and of course his work on Spectre and so many other things. He's a master of the supernatural, And then Layla in the Lands of After is an all ages fantasy about the afterlife. And I don't want the phrase all ages to turn people off. When I say all ages, that's exactly what I mean. That you as an adult can pick it up and thoroughly enjoy it, but hopefully a parent can sit down with their kid after a certain age, and if they're ready to discuss the afterlife with them. and that's Sean McManus, one of my favorite people and one of my favorite artists. We worked together originally on Dr. Fate at DC back in the 80s and early 90s. And he's one of those guys that just every year he gets better and better and better. And the work he's done on this is just phenomenal. And I'm having such a blast with Layla. Mm-hmm. And then there's Godsend. And Godsend, my one-liner is sort of Jack Kirby's New Gods meets The Matrix. That's the best way to put it. It's sort of, again, it's a mystery within a mystery within a mystery. And it's all about one of my favorite themes, which is personal identity. Who we think we are versus who we really are. And then the bigger questions of, okay, and why am I here? And why is this happening? And what is this world? And it's another story that starts out almost with a very personal story and just gets more and more cosmic. We introduce a lot more characters in the second issue, and it gets bigger and broader and broader. So those are the elevator pitches for the four of those. And then we have the Edward Gloom Mysteries, which is the one that Vasilis and I have been working on for years. And one of the reasons why we were able to offer it as a bonus book is that we had it set up with a publisher, and through no fault of the publisher, something fell through and we couldn't do it. So we had this, completed issue, and actually the first two issues were complete. And so we said, let's bring it into the Kickstarter. And that was a hard one to explain. It's sort of a Victorian. It has a Victorian flavor, but it's set in the modern day. And Edward Gloom is a sort of a Frankenstein creation, but he is a poet, a musician, a historian, a mathematician, a philosopher, and in the course of our story becomes something of a detective as well. And his beloved girlfriend is a ghost. We've got a Phantom of the Opera-like character on his team, and then the story is narrated by this orphan that they take in, who's at the time of the story's happening is maybe 10 or 12 years old, but is writing about what happened years later. And so it's full of mood and mystery and poetry and monsters, and kind of harkens back to some of my favorite books, like the Wainwrights and Swamp Thing, that kind of moody, poetic, fun story that I really, really love. So each of these dips into a different genre, and they're all genres that I love. And so for me, I get to flex all these different writing muscles, because when I'm writing Godsend, it is not the same as writing Edward Gloom, which is nothing like writing Wisdom, which is nothing like writing Any Man. So it's been great, and to work with these artists is just phenomenal. As I said, Matthew Deaf Smith did the first issue of Godsend, and we have a new artist which we'll be announcing that name soon on it now. But we're saving that announcement. We want to roll out the announcements a little bit at a time.
Yeah,
build up the excitement.
Yeah, I mean, they're all great. I want to read number 2 of everything, and it's like, the one thing, though, is I think Godsend stands out because the rest of them, you spell everything out, and it's very entertaining, and it's great. Godsend, it's a mystery, and you don't get all the answers by the end of issue 1, so that one
right,
really
you're just,
pulls you in.
Fact, it's just kind of getting, you're getting the mystery, you're just stumbling into the mystery in a way with the end of the first issue. Yeah, I can see that. So good.
I mean, they all kind of end on cliffhangers, but that one's kind of a double cliffhanger, because you're like, okay, there's this, but it's like, it's not fully explained. So what's going on?
Right. And of course, the main character's in the middle of that, and he doesn't know what's going on.
Exactly.
Either. Yeah. So good. I'm glad you enjoyed the little twist and turn at the end there.
Oh yeah, like I said, I'm ready for all of these, and like you said, like the whole Layla thing, it's like, yeah, it is like an all ages thing, but there is like that sense of like, I don't want to say dread, but yeah, I mean, there's just this thing where it's like, this could, something could happen to our main character that's not good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's a fantasy adventure. It's also in its own quiet way of philosophical. I couldn't get that word out. Philosophical exploration of the theories of the afterlife too. And Sean is such I've worked with a few people who are just like at the top of their game when it comes to fantasy illustration, like Mike Plug. And Sean is right up there. He is just so good, and what he's done with Layla in both these issues is just one of the great joys of working in comics in general and working on this project is I write these stories, and then I open my email and the art appears, and I've envisioned something in my head, and suddenly there it is, And, and I'm 10 years old again, reading a comic book for the first time. And when you turn that page and you see that big spread or whatever it is. So it's such a joy to work with artists of this caliber and then see that art come in and see what only lived as a dream in my head take on this reality. It's great.
Oh yeah, I mean that always seems. I keep hearing that, and it always seems like stories that are like excellent stories when the writer's like, oh yeah, I described this to the artist, and I got this back, and it was 20 times better than I thought it was gonna, than what I had in my head. Yeah.
What you hope for is either they're going to meet what's in your head or transcend it.
Yes.
And when you're working with guys like this, it will often be transcended. And over the years you work with guys that just they're not there yet, and what you get back is not what you wanted or needed, and you have to find ways to work with that. But the other interesting thing I find just in general about artists, I've seen so many over the years, and you see their art when they're first starting out, and it's like, I don't know if this guy's got it, and like 6 months later, they're phenomenal.
Yes.
I remember working with Ron Garney on Moon Knight, and he was just starting out, and the work was solid. It was good. But he very quickly became Ron Garney, and I worked with him, whatever it was, a few years later on Silver Surfer, and it was like a different guy.
Oh yeah,
his growth as an artist was just phenomenal. So with writers, with artists, with anyone, you can't count anybody out because we're all on a growth curve. If I look at my early stories, sometimes I just cringe reading them. I see my passion. I see the beginning of my skills, but I'm not there yet. And then read a story a year later. We're all growing, and hopefully we don't stop. Hopefully I'm still doing it. And working on series like these, which are challenges to me, you want to challenge yourself so you can grow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so, but you did mention some old stuff. Noel had a question. Random question. How was it writing Howard the Duck and Daydreamers? Were you trying to channel some Gerber? Oh, he loves Steve Gerber's work.
Yeah, Steve Gerber. Steve Gerber was one of the single biggest influences on me of anybody that ever worked in comics. I mean, as I was getting older, the great thing about comics for me was as I got older, comics were growing up with me. So by the time I was a teenager, I went from like 60s Marvel to guys like Englehart and Marv Wolfman and Len Wein and Doug Munch and those guys, but Gerber. There's nobody like Gerber before or since. His voice, such a unique voice, such a unique perspective. And it showed me I think the 70s was, in a lot of ways, was a real golden age of comic books because there were different genres, different approaches. I think it might have alienated a certain younger audience, but for me, as someone who was growing up with those books, it was just, my brain was expanding with them, and Gerber's stuff was just brilliant. So any chance, to do Howard the Duck, or I used Howard the Duck when Liam Sharp and I were doing Man Thing together. It's just like, that's the fun of this business, though. It's just like you get to work with these characters that you loved as a kid, or pay tribute to writers and artists that you loved as a kid. I'm working right now. We're wrapping up Spider-Man: Shadow of the Green Goblin. Mm-hmm. I have a Batman miniseries. I just wrote an episode of the new Amazon Cape Crusader series. Oh. So, there's this little kid in my soul that still goes, if I go back in time and say 10-year-old me, you know what you're doing right now? You've been working on Spider-Man and Batman, His head would explode and he'd rocket around the world 15 times, before he got back into his body.
And you're the only man who's written them both in one comic. Well, 2 times.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's true. 2 times. Yeah, that's right. Someone was asking me about that recently. And I realized when I was doing it, it was like a great gig. I was thrilled to do it, but I didn't realize, wait a minute, I'm the only guy that's done these team ups of Spider-Man and Batman and done one each for each company. And now I look back and I go, that's amazing.
Oh yeah. So after all these, I love that. It's so after all these years, you're still in love with all these characters and
you have to be, or you can't write the stories. And some of these characters, like Peter Parker, like Spider-Man, I've lived with them and worked with them for so long that they are like old friends. So every time Marvel calls me up to do another Spider-Man story, it's like, oh, I get together with Peter or Ben Reilly or whoever it is for this, for another round. And it's great fun. The fun of the Shadow of the Green Goblin one has been that it's set really, really early in Spider-Man's career. So it's just like within the first month after Uncle Ben has died. So he's a very different character. When you look back and realize, when I was like 12 years old reading Spider-Man, he seemed like he was really old, He's a 15-year-old kid who has no clue what the hell he's doing. And he's dealing with the grief of his uncle's murder and the guilt, and Aunt May's a wreck. So it's great to dip into that world and dip into the Osborn family early on before the full bloom of the Green Goblin and see that pain and that dysfunction. And we focus on Gwen and her dad while her mother's dying. And so a lot of it it's rooted in a lot of family drama. And it's all about families, really. Of course, with the icing is all the superhero action that we slather on top of that, you know. But I've had a great time, and Michael St. Maria is the artist. And again, here's a new artist. I've never worked with him, and it's always so. I love working with these guys whose work I've known for decades, and then you work with somebody new, and you go, "This guy's great. Wow, look at what he's And the same thing. He's very new, and even in the course of these 4 issues, I watched his work grow and evolve, and he's just done such a wonderful job. So it's really exciting when that happens.
Yeah, I wanted to talk Shadow of the Green Goblin again, because that is such a great miniseries. And so if you have time in your schedule, if they come to you with any Spider-Man project, is it just like an automatic yes for you?
Pretty much, and it's because I love the character. And on all these Spider-Man projects, I've been working with the same editor. His name is Danny Chasm, a Marvel editor, and he's just a great guy. So, when you have collaborators, when you have an editor who you love working with and you really get along with and you respect them, between the combination of Spider-Man and a great editor, of course I'm going to say yes. I've just wrapped up Shadow of the Green Goblin, but we're already talking about the next one. So there will be another one after this, yeah. Yeah,
because, you've done a few already. There was, 2 Ben Reilly ones? There was
We did Ben Reilly Spider-Man. We did The Lost Hunt. We did Shadow of the Green Goblin.
Yes. Yeah.
And in between, I did that Magneto miniseries.
That too.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I love that too. That was great.
Yeah, I had a great time with that one too.
So do you get to do the fun thing of like, oh, hey, I'm doing these miniseries, set in a certain era. Let me go back and read those comics from that era.
That's again, to go back to the little 10-year-old in my soul. I've often said, sometimes I'm working on animations. What do? They send you episodes, or they send you animatics of the shows, right? Or if I have a new comic book series that I'm going to do, and they'll send me, I just got a whole bunch of reference for the next series we're going to do. So I go to my little 10-year-old self and he said, you know what my job is today and tomorrow? I have to watch cartoons and read comic books. And once again, his little head explodes and he rockets around the world 30 times. And because when your childhood passion becomes your adult livelihood, it's a very magical thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I never take it for granted. I am so profoundly appreciative. And then on top of that, comics opened up the door for me into TV and film and writing prose and all these wonderful opportunities that came my way. It's been, it continues to be a great ride.
What was another question?
Okay.
I know you like to have a social political POV in comics. Were you obsessed with the books? Yeah, I think you said that in all those 70s books.
If you look at the 70s, I liken it to what happened with rock and roll. In the 60s, you had Dylan and the Beatles and the Stones and all these people that were like breaking new ground in rock and roll. Motown, all this stuff is happening. New kinds of music being developed. And then I felt like in the 70s, things broadened out even more. It wasn't so much a moving forward, although it moved forward. There was a big deepening and broadening, and I felt like that's what happened with comics. Stan and Jack and Ditko and those guys were like breaking all this new ground, and then all these young guys came in and sort of exploded it. So and moved into different genres. I remember when I was a teenager and Conan came out. I'd never seen anything like that. I didn't know who Conan was till the comic came out. Barry Smith on Conan, Weenan Wrightson on Swamp Thing. Kirby goes to DC and does the Fourth World, which was bigger and better than anything he'd done at Marvel. Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams doing Green Lantern, Green Arrow was so political, Doug Munch and Gulacy on Master of Kung Fu, Steve Gerber on just about everything he did at Marvel. Englehart on Captain America and Doctor Strange and all that great work he did. Marv and Gene with Tomb of Dracula. These were all incredible books. And they, like I said, they kept me reading at a point where maybe I would have dropped off again, Marvel, when I discovered Marvel, kept me reading when I might have dropped off. And then these guys came along and kept me reading. And then I was in the business, so I guess I kept me reading.
What do you say, Noel? The 70s were punk. Howard was the most punk.
Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
Man, people, if you weren't around when Howard the Duck hit, you don't know what a big deal it was at the time. It was one of those things where it like exploded. And then, it's with time, it just kind of settled down. But at the time, it was the first, I always call it the first underground comic, because it really had the sensibility of an underground comic book published by an overground comic book company. And the work that Gerber did on there, and most of it he did with Gene Colan, there was a guy, Gene Colan, he was probably in his 40s or 50s at that point, working with these young guys like Marv and Steve, who were challenging him to do the kind of stuff he'd never done before. And boy, did he deliver, You look at that beautiful, moody work on Tomb of Dracula and the crazy things he had to do on Howard the Duck. Oh, yeah. Please design a character called Dr. Bong, whose head is a big bell.
Yeah.
And he did it well.
So yeah,
I love the 70s. I love those books.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, but it's like, of course, Stan and Jack kind of like set like in the 60s, kind of showed everyone, oh yeah, you don't have to have like cookie cutter superheroes stuff, and it just expanded in the 70s.
They built this incredible foundation, and everybody started building on that foundation to this building that goes up 65 million stories, literally stories. That's funny, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you're doing all this Spider-Man work, but yeah, and then like you said, I mean, I cannot wait. You have a Batman project coming up here soon.
Yeah. So Robin Lives. Yes. So it is we all know the famous Jim Starlin, Jim Aparo story where the Joker killed Jason Todd, and so this asks the question: well, what if he didn't die? And if you remember, back then was that
the 900 number,
let's just call it what it was, that stunt.
One of the original stunts
where they had one of the original stunts, that's right, and it worked, didn't it? Where they had a vote whether he'd live or die, which is really it's sort of very Roman Colosseum, isn't it? And they voted that he was to die. So this story is like, well, what if he did live? And they did a version, I guess. It had two versions of that that issue, one where he lived and one where he died, and I think they reprinted. They put out the one where he did live.
Yeah, just recently.
This takes it from there, and we're dealing with a lot of trauma here. Here's this kid who almost dies. He's lost his mother. Here's Batman, who you got to really look at that question: why is this guy bringing children out into these dangerous situations? And he's got to face that. That's one of the big things he has to face in this story. And then we got the Joker out there as our wild card. And I had fun because I got to bring in a lot of other Batman villains and sprinkle them into the story and get into Arkham Asylum and all these other fun things. But it's really, really a very emotional journey for Bruce and for Jason, and Dick Grayson comes into it in a big way as well. And so I'm having a lot of fun. Rick Leonardi's doing the art. We all, Rick has been doing great work for forever at Marvel and DC. So it's going to be a good looking book. And it's been a lot of fun. And then, like I said, then on top of that, I got involved with the Cape Crusader show, which I can't say anything about beyond the fact that I've written an episode. That's the only permission I have. And I can say that from what I've seen, it's going to be very different and a lot of fun.
Oh,
and
nice.
It's not, it's not Batman the Animated Series. It's something else. But they've released images and they've talked about that they're trying for something different. Yeah. So I think it comes on in August on Amazon. But they renewed it for 2 seasons, so the episode that I wrote is for the 2nd season. So
okay.
So you won't see my episode for quite a while.
But that was good. That was gonna be my question. Did they announce a premiere date? So you're thinking August?
I think I saw it online. I don't think I'm saying anything that hasn't been announced. I'm pretty sure if you Google it, there's an August premiere date. So so it was. I haven't done Batman in quite a while. So suddenly, it's funny how these things work, and suddenly it's like I'm like up to my neck in Gotham City, which is fun because I love that character. But who doesn't, right?
Yeah. So the big ones like that, like Spider-Man, Batman. So like if it's been a while, like once you get into it, or does it come back to you like that? You're like, oh, okay,
It really does. It really does. Especially with Spider-Man, because I've done a lot of Batman over the years. I took a step back one day and looked at all the Batman stories I'd done. But although I'd never done an Batman ongoing, but a lot of miniseries and graphic novels and a lot in animation and just a lot of Batman. But Spider-Man, God knows how many Spider-Man stories I've done. So it's just like the second I start to write, it just clicks in. It just clicks in.
Oh yeah, yeah. What was I going to say? So you did a season 2 episode of Cape Crusader. So
yeah.
So do you know everything that happens in season 1 then?
No, I haven't seen.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I saw what I needed to see.
Okay.
That fed into my episode.
I didn't know if they gave you. I didn't know if they gave you the whole pitch for season 1 and be like, okay, so this is where Batman's going to be in season 2. Yeah, okay.
Right. I had a general sense of what had happened and some specific episodes that I saw that fed into my episode, which gave me the flavor of the show and the journey. And then, you're working with these guys. So even if I don't know everything from having read a script, they're going to tell me, no, in episode so-and-so we did this. And this Batman doesn't talk like that. He talks like this. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you have to how to get a handle on this version of Batman. And that's also the great thing about these characters, because they're open to such a wide interpretation. I did like 8 episodes of, if you remember, Batman the Brave and the Bold, which was a very kid-friendly show. Great show, though, a really smart show. But it was the kind of show you could watch with your 7-year-old. Yeah. And that was a very different Batman. And yet, at its core, it was still true to the essence of what Batman was. Then you have the really dark Batman, and every kind of color in between. So these characters, you have to stay true. There's an essence there that if you don't stay true to the essence, then it breaks. Mm. But if you stay true to the essence, you can interpret them in a lot of ways. I mean, look at some of the Spider-Man animated shows that have all had very, very different interpretations. And some of them I look at and go, well, yeah, that's not a Spider-Man I relate to, and yet it's true to the essence of who that character is.
Oh, yeah. Again, those two are more than probably any character in the big two. It's basically like, you can do so many things with them. You can make things for young children. You can make, darker things for adults, and it all works.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look at the Batman Lego movie, for God's sake, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it worked. Mm-hmm. It really worked.
Oh, yeah. You can inject humor. Yeah. So you did say there is another Spider-Man miniseries coming after Shadow of the Green Goblin. Okay.
Yeah. You won't see it for a while because I won't be starting it until the fall. So.
No, not like you're busy. Yeah, not like you're busy or anything.
Right. It won't be out till next year. Yeah. Right now I have the Kickstarter, and I don't know if we talked about it last time. I think we did. In recent years, I've done a couple of novellas, one called The Excavator and one called The Witness, both of which are available on Amazon. I'm very proud of them. I think it's some of the best writing I've ever done. And I'm working on my 3rd novella, which I have to get done in the next month or so. So, I have to take care of the novella. I have to take care of the Kickstarter, and then we're going on vacation.
Oh, nice.
and then it's back to work.
Can you ever completely shut your brain off, or ideas constantly come into your head and be like, oh, I know what I can do with Spider-Man?
Oh, I whether it has to do with Spider-Man or not, but I can never shut it off. I could never shut it off. So I say to even if I wasn't doing this for a living, my brain would be making up stories. It's just the way my brain works, and on vacation, I could be on a spiritual retreat. And all of a sudden there it goes. And the movies start playing in my head. Oh, I better go back and write this one down, but that's fun for me. That's not, work is sitting down and taking that and chiseling it into a finished script, but the ideas, they feel like they come from some other dimension and they're just coming through me. And when it starts to come, it really is. It's often like I'm just sitting back watching a movie, and I hope I can write it down and capture what I just saw. That's just pure joy. There's something magical and mysterious about it. I don't understand the process. It comes from the unconscious, and I think there's something beyond the unconscious that feeds it through that door, and then it comes into my conscious mind and plays on this screen in my head. And sometimes it just literally comes out of nowhere. You wake up in the morning and my eyes are closed and I'm laying in bed and, oh, look, what's that? And this whole story starts to unfold, or even when I'm working on something and you get stuck, and I've had this happen many times over the years, I get stuck. I'm not sure where to go next. And I've learned over the years to honor the unconscious, because I think I'm doing the work. The unconscious is doing the work. So I walk away, I give it room, and then I may be just laying on the couch, and suddenly, without thinking, pop, the whole solution appears in my head in an instant. An entire scene is there, and I love that after all these years, it's still mysterious to me and it's still magical, because that makes it still exciting,
But the novellas, like what genre are those? Like science fiction, or are they?
I would call them supernatural thrillers.
Oh, okay.
Sort of. I'm a big Twilight Zone fan. I like stories about ordinary people that take a step to the left and find themselves in extraordinary situations. I'll give you the premise of both of them. This way, people will know what I'm talking about. The Excavator starts, and this is just the beginning of a long journey. This woman is sleeping. Her husband is beside her. She wakes up and she sees this kid standing at the end of her bed. She's never seen this kid before in her life. First, she thinks, "Oh, I must be dreaming," and just that in that moment between sleep and waking. But no, she realizes there's some kid she's never seen before standing in her bedroom. What the hell is going on here? And then this kid starts to crawl into bed with her. She freaks out. She swats the kid and knocks him to the floor. The husband wakes up. What's going on? And the kid starts crying and turns to her husband and says, "Daddy, why did mommy just do that to me? This is her son." And she has absolutely no memory that he ever existed. Wow. She remembers her husband. She remembers her daughter. She remembers everything else about her life. But that one memory has been excised. They take her to the hospital. They think she's had a stroke. What's going on? They can't figure it out. And then they get a text message that says, I'll get the amount wrong, give us $500,000 to return the memories of your son, or we'll take your daughter next. And that's just the first step in a long journey. Okay, so that's the excavator. And the witness starts with a main character who is a very sort of cocooned, content family man who likes his comfortable little world and doesn't really want to be watching the news too much. He doesn't want to let too many disturbing things in. His world is his wife and his kids and his job. And he gets restless this one week, and he goes out in the middle of the night for a drive, and he looks up into the sky while he's driving on this country road, and he sees something that looks like it's a UFO. And this thing comes down closer and closer, and then when it gets closer, it's a passenger jet, aflame, right over his head, crashes into the woods. He runs into the woods to find this completely wrecked plane, all these dead bodies, and then all these spirits that he sees rising up out of the bodies. And what happens, not that time, but when he returns to the site, is that all these spirits come whooshing out of the sky right through his forehead. And suddenly, is he crazy? Is it really happening? He thinks he's got 215 souls living inside him, and they want something from him. And that's the premise of The Witness.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that is wow.
Oh, and I should add that each of these novellas has like 10 illustrations by wonderful artists. Vasilis, who did the Everglue Mysteries, he did 10 illustrations and a cover for the first book. And J.H. Williams III, who I'm sure you're familiar with his work, he did 10 illustrations and a cover for The Witness, and both of them did a beautiful job with it.
Wow.
So there you go. That's everything that's out there right now.
Oh, is that all? I just all the time.
I'll be touring with my vaudeville act starting September 1st and starring in a feature film in October. Yeah.
I'm always like, this man must have no free time. You every time I talk to you, you have like, I swear, at least 3 things going on.
I would rather be busy.
Yeah.
As my wife can attest, when I'm not, it's sort of like I can become untethered and the balloon cord gets cut and I start to drift away, I remember years ago, this is got to be 20-something years ago, I decided for the first time to consciously take some time off and not write. Just for I forgot what it was going to be, 3 weeks or something like that, or a month or whatever it was. So I called all my editors and said, I'm going to take a month off. And we weren't going on vacation. I just thought at that point, 20-something years of doing this, like week in, week out, day in, day out, I'll take a little break. And in the end, it was a good thing to do. Of course, what did I end up doing? I started working on a screenplay instead, but that's another issue. But when I first stopped, I got really uncentered and untethered. And I was driving to pick my daughter up at ballet one day, and I was so untethered, I turned the wrong way down a one-way street. And, happily nothing horrible happened, but it was like, I am untethered now because, all these years, it's like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. And suddenly I wasn't, and it took me a while to orient myself in time and space, And like I said, and then after like a week or so, I was like, I have got a great idea for a screenplay. I'm going to start working on that. So
instead of all the ideas, you were distracted by not doing any writing at the time.
Right. Exactly. It's just, some of us are just wired for this. We just are. Creativity was always my thing. When, drawing was my first love. I played music and still do music, for many years, writing songs. I sing, I play, and that's what I'm wired for. I always say it. I only say it half jokingly. maybe less than that. I'm not very good at anything else, This is my skill set.
I think
this is my skill set.
That's most talented people. It's like you're very good at one thing, and everything else you're just like, oh.
Don't ask me to fix something. Do you know what I mean? Don't ask me to build a table or fix your plumbing or whatever it is. I can't do that. But this stuff I'm good at.
So are you saying? Is it good news for us fans where it's like you're never going to retire from writing? Then
I don't expect to.
Yeah. There's no desire to retire one day. Or just
no.
No.
I always say sometimes, well, maybe what I would like is because as a freelancer, still to this day, sometimes you take a gig because you have to, not because you choose to, because maybe that month you need to pay the mortgage and the funds are a little low, whatever it is. But the great thing with what I do is 90% of the times the gigs that I have to are great gigs, and they turn into choose to gigs along the way. But sometimes I think, I'd like to be able to take a year and just write a novel and not do any of that other stuff. But I would probably miss it, So the main lesson I've learned over the years is just say yes, whatever comes along. And sometimes what you're saying yes to is something you never expected to do. And it turns into something you love. I was just talking to somebody the other day about, working in animation. That was not on my list of career choices. I never, I wanted to work in TV and film and all that, but animation was not something, I really was interested in. And I just kind of stumbled into it. And it turned, I've been doing it for like 20 years now. And I love it. It's what a great career path that has been for me. And also just as a freelancer to know, the comic book stuff isn't working right now, but I have animation work over here, or I got hired to work on a TV project over, you have to keep all these doors open. But in terms of, will I keep working? Yeah, there may come a day where they won't be offering me work anymore. And then hopefully that's when I will take a year and write that novel or whatever it is. Actually what I would like to, because working on these novellas has been great fun. So I would like to take the next step. Because the last novel I wrote was a kid-friendly fantasy called Imaginalis, which came out like in 2010. And I would like to flex those muscles a little bit more and do a story like The Witness or The Excavator and do a full novel with it.
Yeah, I don't think you can stop, because you kind of said, if I would take a break, I would write a novel. It's like, you're still writing.
Right, exactly. Or, again, same thing. I still play music. So I might, I'm sitting banging at the piano, writing a song, I need to do something to move that part of my soul out and into the world. It's just what I do and who I am. And I'm grateful for it. I'm so grateful, like I said before, that I've been able to make my living doing this. What a blessing. What a blessing,
And I don't know if I've ever asked you this. I know certain writers, sometimes they'll listen to music, or they have a specific playlist or a certain performer group they have to listen to. Do you have like specific thing, like music you listen? Like, I know you're a huge Beatles fan.
Right. I cannot listen to most music while I'm writing. Like if it's got words and, it's got lyrics and it's like rock, if I was listening to the Beatles or any artist that I love, I couldn't write. What I can listen to is like spacey music, like ambient music. If it's just kind of floating in the background, I can do that. Sometimes I might be able to listen to like a movie soundtrack, or it might get me in the mood. I'm going to start writing Batman. Let me put on one of the Batman movie soundtracks just to get me in the mood. But if it's too intrusive, I can't. Sometimes I just have to shut everything off. But if usually floaty ambient kind of music is good, it just kind of helps stimulate the unconscious, because it feels like you're floating in some cosmic ocean with that music. But if I'm editing afterwards, when the script reaches the point where I'm just going through and I have to change that line, I have to fix this or move that, I can listen to anything.
Oh,
yeah, I can listen to anything at that stage. But in the hardcore creation phase, I really can't. And some people, they say, crank up the rock and roll, I'm going to write, and I can't do that. Can't do it.
So a lot of times, are you just sitting in a quiet room? There's nothing going on, just a quiet room.
Either there's nothing going on, or it's some floaty ambient thing happening.
I'm always intrigued by the creative process. It's like, do they listen to the music? Do they, do this?
Right. Yeah, and I usually have to fill a swimming pool full of mud and get in there with a typewriter, and that's how I work. That's a joke. Let's be clear. We don't want people quoting me. That's just a joke.
You don't want the internet to grab that. No.
That's right. He works in a pool full of mud with an old-fashioned typewriter.
Yeah, that'd be the most shocking thing. He works with a typewriter still.
Right, that's right. I think about that. I think about typewriter days, when, you rewrite a lot. And so you take the same page and roll it through. Again, pull it out, correct it, get a fresh page, retype it, God, I'm so glad I don't have to do that anymore. Working on the computer, that's one more door between the unconscious mind and the finished work that's gone, because it's just so easy to fix and change and move and flow.
All right. So, I'm going to let you go because,
again,
you always have 15 things going on. But yeah, no.
So I'll just remind everybody, July 9th on Kickstarter, DeMultiverse Phase 2.
Oh, nice.
So I hope if you were along for the ride the first time, I hope you come along. And if you weren't around for the first time, come on, and you can get all the first books and catch up. And,
I was gonna say that's the big thing. Yeah, people can catch up because all the issue ones are on the website, right? Spellbound.
Yeah, they're all on spellboundcomics.com right now. And then once we launch the Kickstarter, you'll be able to get them through the Kickstarter as well. So it's all out there, and there they are, my children.
Yeah, that's what I said after I read these. I'm like, if you're a fan of your work, any of your work, you'll love these books.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and thanks for being supportive. I truly appreciate it, because with something like this, with the Kickstarter, it's really down to the creators and the audience. There's no middleman. So when I say to people, we literally can't do it without you, I really mean that. We can't do it without you. So I appreciate every single person that came along for the ride the first time, and everyone that's going to come with us this time.
All right. So, yes, thank you so much. Yes,
my pleasure, Phil.
Always
a pleasure to talk to you.
July 9th, Kickstarter. Go pick up the books, kids. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Stay cool.
Yeah, we will do our best. We will do our best.